This is a pair of tefillin that somebody gave me to put in shemus or shemot, which means names. What that means is that this is holy, it has God's name inside of it, and you can't just throw it out. It is meant to actually be either buried or stored away in a safe place like a synagogue. And before I place this in shemus, in shemot, what I'm going to do actually is cut it open to see what's inside, which biblical texts are inside tefillin. There's no real English word for tefillin. We're going to see what they are, but a common term that you'll see in commentaries and encyclopedias is phylacteries, because that is the term used in the New Testament in the Greek. But really, the word is tefillin. And tefillin, we don't really know what it means, but the singular for one tefillin is a tefillah, which means prayer, and coincidentally, these are worn during the weekdays during prayer. What that means is that if you go to a synagogue on Shabbat, on Saturday, no one will be wearing tefillin, but if you go on a Wednesday morning, they will be wearing tefillin. And so we're going to take a look at these and what's inside. So let's get started. Okay, so I am unzipping the tefillin bag, and I'm going to take out the two tefillin. This is the tefillin of the hand, and this is the tefillin of the head. And we're going to look into this one, the tefillin shel rosh of the head, and there's actually something else in this bag that we'll come to later for a surprise. Okay, so this is the tefillin shel rosh, the tefillin of the head, and it's composed of three main parts. The first is the straps, and these straps are made of leather. And as you can see, the reason why this pair of tefillin has seen its full lifetime, you can see it's already, the paint is really chipped, the boxes are falling apart, there's a crack in here, and these straps, if you think of like a new belt you buy at the store, a leather belt, after like 5 years it starts to look something like this. So this is really an old pair of tefillin. I don't know how old exactly. My best guess is 80 years, but I'm not entirely sure. So on this first part is the straps, and that's what ties the tefillin, the tefillah, to your body. So this is going to be tying this onto one's head. The next part we have is the house, which is called the bayit. And the bayit, the house, as we can see, is a box, and it's painted black. Tradition says that this color goes all the way back to Moses at Sinai, though I don't know for sure, but it's definitely an old tradition to have black tefillin. And what we can see here is that it looks really shiny, but don't let that fool you. This is actually made out of leather. And what that means is this is one big box with 4 compartments made out of leather. And there's really only a couple of places on an animal that you can get really thick hide and turn it into leather and then make it into these compartments. And that usually comes from the chin of the animal, usually a cow or a bull. And so we see over here, this is our tefillin of the head, and we see a letter in Hebrew, which is shin. This stands most likely for the name of God, which is Shaddai. Shaddai, sometimes translated as the Mighty One. So God is represented here with the shin, which has, I want you to just pay attention, it has 3 arms to it. 3 arms, because later we're going to see a different number for this shin. If we turn it on the other side, we see, here it is, we see the 4-headed shin. 4 arms, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is really unusual. We don't see this anywhere in Hebrew writing. There have been many possible explanations for this, but I think most likely it might have something to do that these 4 heads, these 4 arms of this letter shin, represent these 4 compartments in the box. I think that's probably the most likely explanation, but it is by no means certain that that is how that came about. All right, so we have already seen our 2 parts. We've seen our straps, we've seen our leather outer box, and now for the first time in my life, I will be opening the tefillin, and we're going to see what's inside. So the first thing I want to do is just see if we can separate the box, how much we can separate it. into different parts. So we can actually see these different parts. And we see the paint coming off. But again, the paint isn't the main part. It's the leather that's beneath the paint that actually forms the box. Okay, and here we have, this is really hard here. I'm not sure how hard I'm gonna have to push to separate these. So I'm just gonna leave them we have one that's separated, and the other three, you can kind of get the idea. So now what I want to do is separate the box itself, and this should open up just like any other box. But let's take a look here, and here we see our string, and the string holds the box tight and closed, and it holds it together. And in case you wanted to guess, what is this string made out of? Well, let's see. We had the straps were made out of leather, the box was made out of leather, and so the strings are actually made out of animal sinews. So kind of like certain violins are made out of animal parts. The string's the same thing here. This string also comes from an animal. So I'm going to cut this, and let's see what happens. Try and cut all the parts. Okay, so I've cut all the parts. Now let's see what happens. We can see here the leather, this is the top of the box is also leather, and I'm opening it up, and there is just a beautiful sight here. These are 4 scrolls, 4 parchment that have been sitting in this place for, my guess is 80 years, could have been 40, could have been 100, I have no idea, but these are very old. So what we see over here are, when we also see how the straps are connected. You see the straps? So now I can disconnect the straps of the tefillin. And what we can see over here are the 4 little boxes. Now what I want to do, I'm not completely sure where we start with which one is number 1 and which one is number 4, but I'm going to guess that, let's see, is this number 1 or is this number 1? I'm not exactly sure. Okay, but I actually want to start with compartment number 3, and my hunch is that this might be compartment number 3. So let's take a look. Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. You see, these tefillin, I didn't bring another pair to show you. I will show you another pair. That's part of my surprise. But these tefillin are very large. So what that means is that the scribe who wrote the parchment for these tefillin probably had a lot more space than other scribes, and I can already see through the parchment that the letters are very large. Sometimes the letters get very incredibly small. So over here we have what I assume is just another animal part. So this might just be a very thin part. And this looks to be a piece of parchment. So this is another, everything is coming from an animal here in these tefillin. So let's take a look. Was this compartment number 3? Let me see. This is not compartment number 3. We will come back to this in a moment. But this is the most beautiful tefillin writing I have ever seen in my life. I mean, just look at the tagin, the beautiful crownlets coming out of these letters. How gorgeous these are. I know these might be small. These are about the size of some Torah scrolls. These are gigantic. So I am already just shocked at the beauty of this, but we're going to come to this passage in a moment. So if this is passage number 2, let's put it back where it belongs. Then my hope is that this is passage number 3. And this one's really deep down. I hope I can get this out. This is it. All right, everyone, let's take a look. This is one of the most important verses in the entire Bible for Jews. This is the beginning of the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, and you shall love the Lord your God. B'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha. With all of your heart, and with all of your life, and with all of your strength. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha. And these things which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart. V'shinantam levanecha, and you shall teach them to your sons. V'dibarta bam, and you should speak about them. B'shivtecha b'veitecha, when you are sitting in your house. Uvelechtecha vaderech, and when you are walking on the way. Uveshochbecha uvkumecha, and when you lie down and when you get up. Now here is the main point. All of this is incredibly, incredibly important, what we've just read. Listen, Israel, love God, follow Him, etc. But here, why is this passage in the Tefillin? Right here at this word. Ukishartem leot al yadecha, and you should tie them as a sign on your hand. V'hayu letotafot bein einecha, and they shall be frontlets between your eyes. And that's the tefillin of the hand and the tefillin of the head, at least according to Jewish interpretation. That's the first passage. So we've already seen that in the tefillin itself is the verse that talks about the tefillin. This will now bring us to the fourth passage. And we have over here, again, wrapped in what's probably sinew, we have parchment holding it together, and we have a giant piece of parchment. These are so beautiful that I'm actually thinking I might not actually put these in Shemos to be buried. I actually might display or use them with more respect. These are beautiful. And what we have over here is the second passage of the Shema. And I'm not going to read the whole passage for you. You can see there's a lot going on here. I'm just going to find for us the main part that I want to say. Look how long this is. Wow, I don't know if you can get, I'm still going. Wow, I never expected this. These are the biggest tefillin I've ever seen. Now, some people do have big tefillin today. It's not necessarily an old thing, but like my tefillin, for example, probably at least a third smaller than this, at least. So we see over here another passage from Deuteronomy. And if you ask yourself, why was this passage mentioned? Why is this the passage that becomes part of the tefillin? Well, we can look over here. Ukshartemotam, and you shall tie them, liot al yadchem, as a sign on your hand. That's the tefillin of the hand. Vayu letutofot beinechem, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. So the main idea in this passage, like the first one, is that you shall remember God, you shall remember His commandments by tying this as a sign to remind you about all that God has done for you. And that's not just leaving Egypt, it's everything that God has done for the people of Israel. All right, so we've done 2 out of the 4 compartments. At this point, we're going to actually go to a different book in the Bible. We're going to be looking at Exodus. And it's going to be a lot of the same that we've already seen. So let's take a look in compartment number 2. This was the one that we opened up originally, but we're going to come back to it. And this is a passage we can see, Vayaki Avecha Adonai El Eretz HaKanani, and it will be that when God brings you to the land of the Canaanites, and what you should do is you should redeem the firstborns, and then when your son asks you, why do we do this? You should say it's because God took us out of Egypt. That's why we redeem the firstborn animals, the firstborn children. That's why we do that. And then, how are you supposed to remember that God took us out of Egypt? Well, again, we are going to find this verse at the very bottom. V'haya la'ot al yadecha, and it shall be as a sign on your hand. That's the tefillin of the hand. U'tofot beinecha, and has frontlets between your eyes. That's the tefillin of the head, which is actually what we're opening up at this exact moment. So we already see now a third passage that mentions tying a sign, and that is what gets you into, let's kind of keep these in order here. I'm going to make sure they're in order here. We have, this is number 3, number 4, so number 2. 2, 3, 4. And then we are going to look at the last and final passage, also from Exodus. Now, while I pull this out, I'll just say that in the Dead Sea Scrolls, when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, they also found some tefillin that's more than 2,000 years old. And there was another passage in the tefillin at that time that is no longer in tefillin. And that passage was the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments used to be in the tefillin, but nowadays they stopped being in the tefillin. Over here we're looking at the 4th passage. This one is from Exodus. Well, technically this is the first passage. And what we see over here is, again, a nice huge one. And here at the very, very bottom it says, V'haya lecha la'ot al yadecha, and shall be a sign on your hand, L'zikaron beinecha, and a remembrance between your eyes, L'man tiyeh Torah Adonai b'ficha, so that the Torah, the teaching commandment of the Lord, shall be on your mouth. It shall be in your mouth, in your words. And so these passages, while they contain more than just the mention of what Jews have interpreted to be the tefillin, these 4 passages, in a sense, are telling you to wear tefillin. And it's almost the chicken and egg. Well, they're telling you to wear tefillin. Well, what's tefillin? The tefillin consists of these 4 passages. So it really is a circle going round and round. What are tefillin? These 4 passages. What do these 4 passages say? Wear tefillin. All right, so this is our tefillin of the head. We've seen the straps, we've seen the top, and now what I want to do is put these to the side. And remember, everything here will either be preserved, for example, in a frame nicely, or it will go to Shemos, to Shemot, so that it could be dealt with according to tradition. Over here we are looking at the tefillin of the hand. And the first thing you'll notice, look, there are straps, but instead of 2 straps, it's 1 long strap, because it goes all the way down one's arm. So this is not going to be the same kind of strap, but it's still a strap. We've already seen this before. But what's different here is we have the box has 1 kind of face. When we look at this box of the head, we had 4 compartments. And the 4 compartments were real compartments. They weren't imaginary. But here, what we're going to see is that there aren't 4 compartments. There's just going to be 1. Let's see what happens. Okay, I'm going to undo each of the sinews. Now these sinews are very easy to break, but on the one hand, but on the other hand, these sinews have been tied for probably 80 years. So these are definitely, they've held the test of time. Okay, I'm going to open up. And here we see, just like I said, instead of 4 compartments, we have 1. We could take off the straps. And in this 1 compartment, we have the main passage. Let's pull it out. And it looks like there's something else in here. I wonder what this is. Maybe this is just, I think this might have just been, like, this is parchment. I think it was just there to, like, fill in the space so that it doesn't, like, move around. I think that's probably what that was. But I'm not sure. I don't know exactly why that piece of parchment was there. Here we have a beautiful hand. This scribe, whoever did this, is phenomenally talented and good. I do scribing, but this is something I'll never be able to write Hebrew as beautiful as this. So what we actually see here are the 4 passages, and you can actually see them being separated by the white space. This is passage 1. I'm pulling, and now here's passage 2. We see the big ayin in Shema and the dalet at the end of the line for the Shema. Traditionally, that's because the ayin and dalet, when you put them together, those big letters, they mean aid, a witness, almost like a witness to either the covenant or to God himself. And then over here we have the last of the 4 passages. And so this is now what is inside of our tefillin. When I think about tefillin, I think what's inside? Well, it's the passages about the tefillin. It's the passages about the hand tefillin and the passage about the head tefillin. And when I think about, well, what is tefillin? It's the idea is in those passages to remember God and to remember everything that happened when leaving Egypt and to the people of Israel. Now, I'll end with, I said there's a surprise at the end. I'm not going to cut this open, but the person who wore these tefillin had a surprise for us at the end. And these are 2 tiny little pairs of tefillin. You can see, just for comparison, the difference in size between these. So why are there these 2 tiny pairs of tefillin? These are called Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, and these are called Rashi tefillin, so to speak. And what it means is that it's the same exact thing, except for the order of the passages is different. So if we were to cut this open, which I'm not going to, we would see a much smaller parchment, and the order would it be a little bit different, something like that, depending on which one, where you start from and where you end. Alright, so that is the tefillin. We've seen the biblical texts. I will have in the video description every single text translated for you, so you can actually study these yourself. And the next time you ever see anyone or wear for yourself something that looks like this, you'll know what's inside. Inside are passages about the tefillin themselves and not forgetting God. Remind yourself to not forget God.